Joining us now is Mark Mitchell, head pollster for Rasmussen Reports. So, Mark, I don't envy you right now because I'm sure you're doing a lot of interviews where the host is panicking. And they're, Mark, tell me it's not true. Tell me it's not true. Maybe not. But at least if you had any window into my phone yesterday, I had at least 9 different people, some donors, some activists. Charlie, what's going on with this New York Times Siena poll? What's going on here? So, Mark Mitchell, tell us, what is the true state of the race, Kamala versus Trump?
Well, I think we've built up a lot of trust, and the people who are following us, let me tell you, are not freaking out because exactly what's playing out right now in our numbers is what I predicted. Donald Trump was beating Joe Biden all year, up very comfortably. And the entire time we were polling on Kamala Harris, every time we poll, she's slightly less favorable than Biden. She underperforms him by maybe 1 point against Trump. And I said, well, if they switcheroo, like nobody really cares on the Democrat side who the candidate is. The numbers we are going to see are the exact same before and after. Now, you know, there's always bounces and swings happen, and we absolutely saw that in our data. We poll every night, and I tell you what, every other pollster is polling every night as well. And what they saw is the same thing I saw in my data, which is the very first night, you know, out of the blue, everybody's like, Kamala Harris, the switcheroo happened. Donald Trump beat her by 16 nights in a matchup, 16 points. The very next night, it was down to 6 points. And then for a couple days, Kamala Harris in our polling actually beat Donald Trump by 2 or 3 points. But then it all faded. It's gone. The bounce is over. And we've been polling every night, putting out our big polls on Thursday. That's a cumulative aggregate of all of the data. And what I'm starting to notice is that nobody's putting out polls this week. Everybody watching this should go to Real Clear Politics and just, look at the race right now and the general election 2024 race. There have only been 2 polls put out that have data any fresher than August 4th. So what I think is happening is I think the entire polling industry is trying to carry water for the Democrats right now. There was a slew of polls that came out when she became the candidate. And you're telling me all of a sudden, 84 days to the election, she just picked her vice presidential running mate and not a single poll except for like YouGov and Rasmussen?
And the New York Times Siena one, which was, so can you help us kind of deconstruct that one?
That one was just like 3 swing states. They picked the 3 swing states that were worse for Donald Trump. And listen, here's the thing. Trust is very important. People talk about transparency in polling. Let me tell you, if I wanted to, I could do whatever I wanted with these numbers. There's no amount of transparency that would make up for an unscrupulous pollster. And let me tell you how we're different from New York Times Siena. New York Times has a huge revenue line. They have a ton of money that they can throw at polling, and it doesn't really matter to them if they're accurate or not. If our polling is inaccurate, we go out of business. So I'm trying very hard not to be biased, to find the biases, to put out accurate numbers. And if I see no pollsters out there doing general election matchups, that tells me that they're seeing the same numbers I am, and I just refuse to publish the poll. It's New York Times Siena, I'm sure, was in the poll this whole last week asking general election matchups. So where are their numbers? Why didn't they put them out? Right? When are they going to stick their neck out and show that Kamala Harris, the honeymoon's gone, it's faded? There's no amount of bounce based on just press and zero accomplishments. I mean, all the questions we've asked about her record are absolutely horrible. People think she failed as a border czar. People think her economic policies are going to be way worse than Trump's. So, I mean, to me, that's the fundamentals of the race. And again, sometimes info ops are successful. They do seem to be thrown very rapidly at people, like one after the other. No, Trump didn't get shot. Yes, JD Vance is weird. Like, these things happen and they kind of work. Right now, I think pollsters are ducking and hiding and waiting for maybe the beginning of the DNC, or I don't know, maybe while we're talking right now, everybody's dropping their polls. But I just don't see how, based on where my numbers were before the switcheroo and after the switcheroo, how anybody, I mean, Trump was up like 3 points in the Real Clear Politics aggregate before the switcheroo. It's going to go right back to that if it hasn't already.
So let's just repeat. What do your numbers show right now? What does your numbers show in Arizona? What do they show in Georgia, Pennsylvania? Not the national polls, but walk us through kind of the. So if Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, Georgia, he's president because he's going to win Iowa. He'll win North Carolina. He'll win Ohio. He'll win Florida. I already have those in the safe category. So therefore, if he wins Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona would be nice, but it's not as necessary. It's done. So let's go one by one. What is your polling show in Pennsylvania?
I just want to step back. And again, the top line national numbers. Last time we put the big one out, 5 points up Trump in a national election poll, right? So that is like a 12 or 13 points reversal from where he was 4 years ago. I just want everybody to understand that as the context for the swing states. Polling in swing states is hard, especially now that everybody goes to online panels. The online panels in the states are really small, and every swing state poll is smaller than a national poll. It's going to have a larger margin of error. We went into the swing states in July, and in every single one of the six swing states in a multi-way matchup, we had Donald Trump up from 1 point all the way up to 9 points in Arizona. We had him up 5 in Georgia. I think we had him up 3 or 4 in Pennsylvania. So we had Trump comfortably winning every single one of the swing states, closest in Michigan, tied in a two-way. But again, there's a larger margin of error there. But what's important to point out, in that poll, that particular sample, when it was all collected, Trump was winning 3 points nationally. So for Real Clear Politics aggregate to have Trump up 3 nationally, I don't care what the swing states say. They're going to probably look pretty similar to mine, right? And I mean, we'll have to see, right? There's tricks that people are going to do when they put these swing states out. They can pick specifically when to sample. They can aggressively squash results that they think are outlier data points. They can surreptitiously switch the way that they weight and oversample Democrats versus Republicans. That's one of the tactics I think a lot of people are using right now. I can proudly say we're Democrat +2. We might go to Democrat +3, but I tell people if I'm going to shift them, I'm not going to do D+2 1 week to show Donald Trump beating Joe Biden and then D+5 the following week to show Kamala Harris up. That's scummy because it doesn't show up in the disclosures. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of negative tricks. And I think ultimately, as we all know, and as we'll tell you, and most other pollsters will not, that election integrity matters more now, especially this year, than it ever has before. And all of the numbers about that topic are going in the wrong direction. So, I mean, again,
what do you mean by that? What do you mean the wrong direction? What do you mean by that?
Well, after the 2020 election, we all heard about the big lie, right? When we went into the field and said to people, how likely is it that cheating affected the outcome of the 2020 election? We got a number kind of in the high 40s that people said, well, it was at least somewhat likely. We've asked that question 7, 8, 9 times between now and back in the 2020 race. And now we've started asking it about the upcoming 2024 election. The number is up to 66%. So now 2 out of 3 voters in this country think it's at least somewhat likely that cheating is going to affect the outcome of the election. A majority of Democrats now, for the first time, a massive number of Republicans, and the independents tend to agree with Republicans on this topic. But we've asked a bunch of different ways, too. And I'll tell you, we have a very strong body of election integrity work. We're really the only ones. Numbers coming out today, how likely is it that non-citizens are legally registered to vote in your state where you live? 55% of voters say at least somewhat likely, 32% say very likely, 69% of Republicans. And we've had a couple other zingers over the last couple months too. In that same swing state poll that we did, in the national portion, which was a 2,500 person poll, we showed that 9%, and again, this is a likely voter poll, 9% of the respondents answered either no or not sure to the question, are you a U.S. citizen? 5.3% said no. 97% of those people in the 2020 who did you vote for question said they voted for one of the candidates. So according to that poll, non-citizens are voting in the United States. And we also had a great one we did with Heartland. We asked 2020 voters who voted by mail-in ballot. We gave them a list of 5 potential things that they could have done with mail-in ballots that were fraudulent. Like, hey, did you fill one out for somebody else? Did you, vote in a state that wasn't your own? Blah, blah, blah. 28% of people who voted in the 2020 election admitted at least one of those forms of fraud in a poll. The average was about 20% for each one of them. I mean, it goes on and on. In that same swing state poll, we asked people, hey, in the 2020 election, did you receive more than one mail-in ballot or a ballot at your house for somebody that didn't live there? It was 18% nationally, 20% in the swing states. So elections are an absolute mess in this country. Everybody seems to know it, in my opinion, along with the suppression polls or whatever the opposite of suppression is. They aren't polling at all. It's crazy. 84 days to election. One poll that's not Rasmussen came out since August 4th. They just declared Tim Walz the Democrat running mate, and not a single national corporate media pollster cares to understand what Americans think about that selection. Because when Kamala Harris became the candidate, or the switcheroo, Reuters Ipsos was tripping over themselves to put a poll out within 36 hours. Where are all the rush polls to put, polls out showing how great a pick Tim Walz was? Well, there aren't any, because I'm pretty sure they're going to show that Kamala Harris is losing to Donald Trump nationally right now.
Let's play cut 15, please.
Trump and J.D. Vance here. We know, I've been talking about J.D. Vance's net negative favorability rating. That is, more people view him unfavorably than favorably. Donald Trump has the same thing. I will point out this is among the higher numbers for Trump, but still, he's underwater here at -7 points. Jump over to the Democratic side with me, if you will. Take a look here. Kamala Harris is actually better liked by more voters than she is disliked at a +2 net favorable rating. And then Tim Walz here at a +11 rating. It's as simple as this. Politics is about being liked, and the Democratic ticket is better liked than the Republican ticket.
30 seconds. Respond to that, Mark Mitchell.
Listen, every human has biases. Every poll has biases in it. I'm trying to get them out of my polling because we cease to exist. There's a great chart I'd love for you guys to put up, or if you could go look at it on our Rasmussen Twitter feed, that shows all of our polling in 2016, 2020. Everybody calls us a right-wing pollster. We were actually 1.5, 2 points left in 2020, and we were incredibly accurate. So at the end of the day, it comes down to track record. Right now, my numbers show Trump's up about 3 to 5 points right now.
Nationally, is that right?
Yeah.